Right now, I'm standing at the side of one of the most mistranslated, misunderstood places in all of Scripture. We're here in the courtyard of Caiaphas, the place where Jesus is going to be put on trial before the Sanhedrin, and where Peter is going to deny Jesus 3 times. But after Peter does that, many people believe something happens that may not actually have happened. One word is mistranslated in Scripture that changes how we see that entire moment. And the thing is, there's actually many words that are mistranslated in Scripture that completely change how we see those passages, including those that change key moments in Jesus' life, like this one. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brandon Robbins, and I've helped millions of people around the world to see the Bible differently through a process called looking beyond the words. And what that means is learning how to read the Bible in the same way that people did at the time of Jesus, understanding the context, the locations, and the words that not only help us to see things in the Bible we've never seen before, they also help us to make the connections between what we're reading and our relationship with Jesus, so that we can immediately apply what we're learning. In fact, if you'd like to learn more about how to study the Bible like this, I've got a free resource called How to Read Beyond the Words. To download it, just click the link above or down in the description. And in this, you're going to learn the simple process that I teach that will help you to start looking at Scripture in a whole new way and understanding things the first time you read them. Because now you know what to look for. Things like key locations, people, and words. In fact, let me take you to a location right now that helps us to reimagine a key word in the Bible that will change the way you see both Jesus and his father Joseph. Now, the word for the occupation of Jesus and his father Joseph is the word tekton. And often we translate this carpenter, right? And we imagine Jesus making tables and chairs. We imagine in our Christmas pageants a wooden manger sitting out there where Jesus would have been laid after he was born. But what do you see around you? Everything here is stone, right? The house behind me is made out of stone. Because in the region of Galilee, especially in areas like Chorazim and Capernaum and these places where Jesus would have been and traveled and even lived, it's filled with basalt stone, this volcanic stone that they use for everything. They use it for their homes, their utensils, all their supplies. They're using what's around them. And so when we think of that word tekton, we don't want to just think of a word that means wood and carpentry. We want to think of stone. That Jesus was a stone mason, that he was a part of this community that used what was around them to build their homes and live their lives. And it really changes the way that we imagine the Holy Land. It changes the way that we imagine stories, right? Jesus wasn't born in a wooden manger. In fact, he was born in a stone manger. That's where he was laid after he was born, because that's what they had, because that's how they lived. Now, like we saw, when we understand the kind of work that Jesus and Joseph did, it changes our understanding of where Jesus lived throughout his life. And there's another word in Scripture that is equally mistranslated. But in this case, it doesn't just change how we imagine where Jesus lived, it also changes how we imagine where he was born. And that word is kataluma. Let me show you. This is the kataluma. You see, the way a house was designed at the time of Jesus, there was an upper room where the family slept. But what Luke tells us is that when Jesus is born, that room is full. There's too many people in the house. Or maybe it's just because Mary is about to be unclean as she gives birth. So instead of Jesus being born in the kataluma, he's born down here in the lower level of the house, where the household animals lived, which is why Jesus is placed in a manger. The next word that we're going to look at is one that has confused people for centuries. In fact, it's part of Jesus' most controversial teaching. The moment that he says that in order to be his disciple, you need to hate your family. And right now, I'm going to take you to a place in Israel called Caesarea Maritima so that you can understand the word miseo in context. One of Jesus' most confusing statements is in Luke's gospel, when he looks at a group of disciples and says, if you want to be my disciple, you have to hate your mother and father, your wife and kids, your brother and sister, and even yourself, and come follow me. And the word that he uses for hate is the Greek word miseo. But miseo doesn't mean what we think it means. It doesn't mean hate as an emotion of hatred. Jesus isn't the kind of person who would tell us to feel that to the people who matter most in our lives. What he's telling us is that we need to make a choice. You see, in Jesus' culture, a word like miseo didn't mean to hate as in the emotion of hate.
It meant to not choose something. So what Jesus is saying is you have to not choose your mother and father, not choose your wife and kids, not choose your brother and sister or even yourself if you want to be my disciple. What he's saying is you have to choose me over everything. That's what it takes to be a disciple. But when you think about it, Jesus wasn't just talking about family. He was talking about everything in our lives. That we have to choose him not over just the things that matter most to us, but also the culture around us. I mean, we're standing in Caesarea Maritima right now, a place that was full of pagan culture, a place that the quote-unquote Jewish king Herod the Great built to honor Caesar Augustus as a god. And all around Jesus in the Galilee, there are pagan towns. It's the other side of the Galilee, the Decapolis. It's places like Sepphoris, where there's all sorts of pagan culture influencing these Jewish people. And he's saying, in the midst of all of this, you need to choose me over all of it. That's what it takes to be my disciple. Leave all that other stuff behind and choose me.
One of the things that I love about being in Israel is how the land changes the way that you see the Bible. It brings it to life in a whole new way. And that's especially true in our next word, a phrase from the 23rd Psalm that only makes sense when you see it up close. Paths of righteousness. Let me show you.
It says, he leads me on the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. You want to see a path of righteousness? It's right here. In fact, as you look on the sides of the mountain, you can actually see it really well over there and kind of on the side of that mountain. You see there, it kind of looks like these veins just expanding out on the side of the mountain. And there, it's these lines, these like slightly lighter colored lines that just go in the midst of the mountain. It's the path that the sheep walk on. And if you watched me walk down this hill, you know this is crazy treacherous. I mean, like every step you're taking is like you're standing on gravel and you could slip and your feet could go out from under you and you could just tumble all the way down this mountain. And then you get to this, and all of a sudden, everything just eases up. And you can walk on this path, and it's safe, and it's easy. In fact, one of the things that will happen as the sheep follow their shepherd on this path of righteousness is they won't even look where they're going. They'll just walk along the path, and as they go along the path, they'll turn their head to the left and the right to eat from the green pastures. And they'll just keep following their shepherd. And you know what they do? You know how they know where they're going? They don't look. They listen to their shepherd's voice. And there could be so many shepherds around here calling their sheep, but they know their shepherd's voice. It gives whole new meaning to when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know of me. They know my voice. Sheep know the shepherd's voice, and so they follow. In fact, the way that a shepherd can tell that his sheep are sick is that the sheep stop following his voice.
Places like this cause the words in Scripture to come alive in amazing new ways. The land brings the words to life and reinterprets them for us. And this is also the case with our final word, one of the most mistranslated words in all of the Bible, and one that dramatically changes how we envision one of the final moments of Jesus' life, in the courtyard of the high priest. Let's take a look.
Peter is sitting around a charcoal fire that night as everything's going on with Jesus. And one by one, people come up to him and start recognizing him. And they say, hey, you're a follower of Jesus. You're one of his disciples. He's like, no, not me. And then somebody else comes up and it's like, no, I recognize you, right? You got the accent. You're Galilean. It's got to be you. No, it's not me. And then at one point, somebody who's the cousin of Malchus, the guy whose ear Peter cuts off in the Garden of Gethsemane, comes up and is like, I know it's you. And Peter just starts cursing, right? And we tend to think curse words, but he's just, advocating so strongly for himself. I swear it's not me. And then all of a sudden, what happens? You tell me what you think happens. Right after Peter does it the third time. Jesus looks at him, and a rooster crows. But I think there's actually a reason to believe that that's not exactly what happens. See, there's a phrase, or there's a pattern to how things unfold throughout the night at the temple. And at some point, let's say around 3 o'clock in the morning, there'd be a changing of the guard. And when there was this changing of the guard, they would blow the horn. It would make this really, really loud noise to announce what was happening. And there was a special name for the person who blew that horn. Karot Hagaver. It's a phrase that means cock crier. So instead of necessarily a rooster being in this spot, it actually very well could have been a man, right? The word gever means man. And so this man gets up outside of the temple, or up in the temple, and he blows the horn, and that's what Peter hears that night. Not a random rooster, but a sign of something happening right over there at the temple.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what difference does it make that it was a horn instead of a rooster? But what I think this moment highlights is something we see with all of these words, that many of the English translations we have give us false images of what's happening in Scripture, and in some cases, like miseo, cause us to think Scripture is saying something that it just isn't. And that's why I created the Beyond the Words membership. This is a membership that not only gives you a proven process for studying the Bible, it also gives you the knowledge you need to be able to do that. Each month, we dive deep into a subject like the prophecies of Jesus, or first century discipleship, or Jewish customs at the time of Jesus. And we show you how these insights give you those wow moments when you're studying the Bible, and allow you to make the connections that truly allow you to grow in your relationship with Jesus. So if you're interested in learning more about this membership, just click the link above and down in the description. And if you'd like to see another video that will totally change the way you see a familiar scripture, then just click this link right here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.